All right, hello everyone, and welcome back to another episode of Star Wars Mark of Balance. My name is Mark. Hope you guys are doing well, and today I'm going to be talking about Andor, Narkina 5, another fantastic addition to an already fantastic show. You guys already know how I feel about this, but again, we see the methodical plot move forward, and there's a couple points I really want to touch on in this episode. I don't want to go play-by-play throughout the entire one like I've done in the past, but I really want to highlight the prison, of course, where Andor is now staying. I want to talk about Luthen because I think he had a really interesting episode here. Not a lot of screen time, but when he was on screen, we learned more about him, his head state, and what he's trying to do with the rebels, of course, with his interaction with Saw, which I'll talk about a little bit later into the episode. I also have to talk about my queen, Mon Mothma, just for a little. She doesn't have a huge role in this episode, but I do want to talk about some pieces of it that I really enjoyed. And yeah, I think at the end I'll kind of wrap it up with Karn and Deedra and kind of how the ISB are moving forward because they are starting to close the net around Andor and Luthen, otherwise known as Axis, which is a really cool name. Very close to Fulcrum, Fulcrum, Axis. We're talking about simple machines, going back to elementary school and whatever that game was called. But yeah, I thought that was a cool connection between Fulcrum and Axis. Maybe that's where they get the name from and they kind of twist what the Empire called Luthen. I don't know, but we'll see. So the main focus of this episode is the prison on Narkina 5. It makes the Citadel from the Clone Wars look like a summer vacation. And the gimmick of this prison, every fictional prison has a gimmick of some sort, is that the floors become electrified when a button is pressed, and all the prisoners are forced to walk around barefoot because of this. And I like this concept for so many different reasons. Having the prisoners walk around barefoot is pretty demoralizing, and it almost dehumanizes them compared to the guards who are allowed this safety by having shoes on. And just in general, I feel like when you walk around without shoes on, people can almost look down on you. No offense to any hippies out there that love walking around barefoot. They hate foot prisons. I get it. But to me, I think there's a larger theme of dehumanization here. The second is it's just practical. You don't have to hand out shock collars. You don't have to chip everyone. You don't have to physically enforce your rules by beating prisoners or shocking them with the staff or anything like that. It's just a very believable prison system, and it's brutal in its simplicity, if that makes sense. And you have to think about the psychological damage this is doing to the prisoners. Not only is it teaching positive and negative reinforcement, but these prisoners are also in constant contact with something that could kill them at any instant. And when I mean kill them, I mean literally fry them. Think about it. They are on their feet all day during these 12-hour shifts, and this floor follows them all the way up to their little bedchamber. So it's not like only the working floor is electrified. Every single square space of this place has the potential to kill these prisoners. It's just so scary to think about, and you eventually see how it gets to them. You see the one prisoner at one point literally kill himself. He gets out of bed in the middle of the night and steps onto this floor and fries himself. I love that they included that to reinforce that point. And the other big aspect of the prison and why it's so ingeniously designed is that the whole working culture is around competition. Not just competition between everyone in your room and your team against them, but also your room against other people on your floor, and then those floors against other floors. And this is beneficial for a multitude of reasons. One, people work harder when there's a competition and when there's a reward to be had at the end. They said, if you win, you basically get taste in your food. And if you lose, you get fried. Once again, positive and negative reinforcement. So right there, your prisoners are going to work harder because they want to not get fried, but they also want to have taste in their food because there's nothing else to enjoy in this environment. They're in constant fear of being shocked. The environment is so sterile and bland and plain that the food almost represents the environment as well. So any escape from that feeling is something that they'll fight in tooth and nail to get to. So your workforce is automatically more efficient now because of this system. And the second aspect is it makes you resent the other tables and the other floors, which in turn stifles any teamwork or rebellion within the prison. If the people around you outside of your team are preventing you from getting taste in your food or getting scolded or getting fried, you're automatically going to resent them. And then if other floors are beating you out, you're also going to hate them too. So now you're not really incentivized to work together to try and rebel and cause a prison revolt. I don't want to take full credit for that point because one of my favorite Star Wars YouTubers, Thor Skywalker, check him out, he's awesome, brought it up. And I was like, yes, this makes so much sense. This is not only a realistic prison, but all these systems they have in place are only making this a more effective prison. So I definitely wanted to talk about that. I wanted to shout out Andy Serkis, of course, one of the best actors of this generation. Love having him back in Star Wars, and the fact that he can play two characters without it being weird. It's just, yeah, he was mocapped for that, and now we're seeing actual Andy Serkis. I love it, and he's great in this episode. And I'm excited to see where this prison escape goes. We see that there's already some communication between levels or floors with this hand signal, so we know that the hand signals will come back eventually when there is a prison break that we see in the trailer. So that'll be coming, which will be really fun, and it'll be interesting to see how the floors kind of begin to work together and not hate each other. So the second aspect of this episode I really want to talk about is Luthen, because Luthen has been this ever-present kind of mystery man in the background. We don't know much about him, but every episode we peel back a little bit of his character and learn just a bit more, and it's all subtly. Of course, Stellan Skarsgård is going to give a beautiful performance, and that's going to be able to convey all this pain and hurt that we see with Luthen's character. You know, we get this great line from the trailer, and he says it here, "I'm not slipping." He's like convincing himself. He's like, I'm not. I'm doing the right thing. I know what I want to do. And he's like doubting himself, because now he's like, wait, I want to go back on this, wait. And he's just kind of all over the place. And then we get this amazing scene between two titans, Forrest Whitaker and Stellan Skarsgård. I mean, you guys know I like my Star Wars actors blackballed. I don't like knowing them from anywhere. I like Star Wars being the only thing they're big for. But when you have two giants like this on the screen, I'll happily break that rule. And the main goal of this scene is basically to show that there are so many different factions of rebels out there with all their different ways to get to the same point. They all want to be free from the Empire, but they all want to do it in different ways. And Forrest Whitaker kind of lays it out. He says, this person's a separatist. This one's a neo-Republican. I'm an anarchist. I'm right. My way, I have clarity. Mine is the only right way. And I'm sure all the other ones are echoing the same sentiments. And Luthen, is just sitting there like, we need to put aside our petty differences and come together, or else we'll never win. And the Empire is just going to keep gaining power, and we're just going to keep spinning our wheels, and we'll end up dying for nothing. Again, when Forrest asks him, like, what are you? The pain on his face, you just don't know what he is hiding. I'm a coward. I'm someone who knows. But really, we don't know anything about him, and I'm so excited to see where his story goes, and Stellan is giving me everything I want and need. There's so many great things to talk about in this scene. I do want to go back to that point where Forrest kind of names all of these different factions in the rebels, and how he mentions this one in the beginning. He says, she's a separatist. Of course, we know that Saw was a rebel against the separatists and on his home world of Alderaan, and his sister was killed by separatists, so he's already going to have that hatred for them baked into him. But the other aspect of it I like is the fact that we're hearing these factions that we used to think are the bad guys, but in comparison to the Empire, they're allies. The enemy of my enemy is my friend. And I love the historical kind of undertones of this. It made me immediately think of communism, capitalism against fascism in World War II. The USSR, the Soviet Union, were doing terrible things. They were not our allies in any stretch of the imagination, but we basically put aside our differences and fought together against the big evil empire, fascism, Nazi Germany, which is funny because, of course, George Lucas used a lot of that iconography for the Empire in the original trilogy. Obviously, the red, black, and white colors of the Empire, the stormtroopers, the helmets that officers wore, and, of course, Darth Vader's helmet, all modeled after Nazi uniforms. So it was cool to see that historical aspect kind of come into Andor and paying respect to George Lucas's original vision. And I always enjoy this reframing of people who were once bad guys are now potential allies in the Separatists. And there was a lot of other names that I don't know, and the Gorman Front and the Neo-Republican. I don't really know what those mean, but the Separatists really stuck out. And I think the reason they put it first was because we would recognize it and maybe draw that connection. So really great framing here that I enjoyed in this scene. But of course, Saw's performance, Forrest Whitaker's performance is unbelievable. Can't wait to see more of him. Need to see more of him. The final thing I want to talk about is him saying, you know, my vision is clear. I'm the only one that's right. And Luthen's like, anarchy is a seductive concept for someone living in a cold cave and begging for spare parts. basically, you already live in anarchy, Saw. The whole galaxy isn't you. They can't live like you. So you need to take a step back and think about it in a galaxy-wide perspective. But yeah, the clash of ideologies, the clash of titans, I can't wait to see more of Saw and Luthen interactions here. I do want to touch on my queen, Mon Mothma, really quick. She had a very small role in this episode, but there were some really cool moments I just want to talk about quickly. I like that we got a little backstory about how her and her husband became married, basically implying it was an arranged marriage. She was only 16. She started in the Senate at 16, and that they were married in the Shanjolan tradition. So we kind of know it's a arranged marriage, and she didn't want this, and she's kind of always been trapped in this life, which again adds to the tragedy of her character and makes her that really tragic hero. And it makes me want a book telling this story about her being a teenager, being married off, and then going directly into the Senate and having to find her way in the galaxy. I think Claudia Gray can do an absolutely fantastic job with this. Her voice was great in the Princess of Leia novels, and Claudia Gray also just does really great political intrigue, and she just knows characters in Star Wars. So I am praying, I am manifesting a Mon Mothma book by Claudia Gray. I really hope we get it. Not sure if it's in the plans, but I think there's enough to work there with. She's got the Clone Wars background. She's young in the Clone Wars as a senator. She's friends with Padme. I think there's so many cool things that they could talk about there. So that's really what I wanted to talk about here. And with regards to the Deedra and Karn storyline with the ISB kind of closing the net around Andor and starting to pick up the pieces, the only thing I really want to talk about here is just how that slow burn, methodical pace of the show has really paid off to this moment here where we see Deedra on Ferrix about to interrogate Bix. Like, it's not unrealistic to think there wasn't any big jumps to make to see that a low ISB agent on a faraway planet can take all these little pieces that they've shown us and put it together to realize this person is connected to Andor, and Andor is connected to Axis or Luthen, and he is the orchestrator of all these rebel attacks. The one rebel attack on Aldhani is the work of him, and the little Imperial Starpath thing that Andor stole ties back all of this together, and I just like that there is no doubt that this is possible. There was no shortcuts. There was no plot conveniences. We saw every step of the way. We saw every aspect on how we got to this point, and now we're at the moment where Deedra is now 1 degree of separation from Andor, and she's got Karn in her back pocket who has a vendetta against Andor. So really excited to see how all these storylines clash and come together. Again, very organic, and that's because of the methodical pace that they've been going with, and I absolutely love it. So I do want to talk about my favorite quotes of the week. Weren't as many as past weeks, but again, still moments where I was like, damn, that was great. I love the writing. So the first one is going to come from the scene where Mon Mothma is kind of chatting with other senators, and they're talking about the PORD Act, which is, going to raise the Empire's order and authority all over the galaxy. And basically someone says like, oh, well, more order's good. If you're not doing anything wrong, then what do you have to fear? And Mon Mothma's like, I fear your definition of wrong. Essentially saying whoever's in power gets to decide what's right and wrong. And if the Empire is in power, we know that wrong could mean so many things. And I thought that was a really poignant line. Another one from Mon Mothma, it's just a really basic line, but I have to agree. One forgets to savor the familiar. You always look back on stuff with fond memories, and you always forget to savor it in the moment. This is not a flex. I'm just talking about it. But when I went to school down in Florida, every day I would see palm trees. Palm trees were just normal, and they became familiar to me, and I didn't really savor them. And now whenever I go back, I'm like, wow, palm trees are so amazing. It's just, you don't really think about it in the moment. And a lot of people would say like, oh, you went to school in Florida, palm trees. Oh my gosh, you saw palm trees every day. And I was like, yeah, it's just palm trees. But you forget to savor those moments. So I thought that was a cool line, and I think a lot of people can relate to that. And the final line I want to talk about is with Mel, is her name Vel or Mel? One of them, and Cinta. They were kind of talking, and you can see that Vel doesn't really want to be in this fight anymore, or she's really prioritizing her relationship with Cinta over the rebellion, which at the end of the day, it's about relationships. And Cinta's basically like, oh no, my family got murdered by the Empire. I'm getting back at them until I die. And I said this from the beginning, and this is the line I really liked. The struggle will always come first. We take what's left. My rebellion responsibilities will always come first. And if there's any time when I'm not doing that, that's when we can be together. But most of the time, it's all rebellion all the time. And you can just see that determination in Cinta's face compared to Mel, who's kind of like, oh, okay, yeah. And we get this little backstory on her where we hear that, you know, maybe she might have been a very rich girl who ran away from home. And I know there's a lot of theories out there that she is Luthen's daughter and maybe something happened between them or the Empire did something to them to split up the family. So we'll see if that comes back around. But again, we see a lot of depth with these side characters. Every side character is round. We know all their motivations. We know what makes them tick. And I just, you know, this methodical storytelling is so refreshing. And keep it going, Andor. You got 4 more episodes left, which is crazy, but not, because it's been a fantastic 8 weeks. So I can't wait for tomorrow. I'm sorry I recorded this late. This is Tuesday. Gonna see the new episode 9 tomorrow, which is amazing. It's my favorite time of day. But yeah, thank you guys for listening. Please let me know on Instagram what you are thinking of the show. Favorite parts, least favorite parts. I just want to talk Andor because I'm obsessed with it, as you guys can tell. And to do that, you can follow me at @star_wars_mark of balance on Instagram. And as always, stay safe, stay healthy, and may the force be with you. Peace.